These are people who seek to kill Mr. Kelly.
It's just him. It's a few people that when they got these long cases, suddenly they all got plots to murder them and they all want to get out fast.
With the facts of where we at now, he's in there for a crime against a woman. A lot of times, crimes against kids, crimes against women, they'll you up.
That's a fact.
That's facts.
That is true.
They say that R. Kelly woke up allegedly on June 13th and he felt faint. He was dizzy. He started to see black spots. He got up and he fell.
R. Kelly didn't just fall from grace. He got thrown straight into a prison system that, according to his own lawyers, looks like it's trying to take him out for good. Word on the inside says Kelly was attacked again, and the way it all went down makes it clear somebody wants him erased permanently. This isn't random violence. This feels like an inside job. The whispers are wild. The so-called hit squad finally got exposed. It all traces back to a man whose clock was already ticking faster than a corner store sandwich going stale. That man, Mike Hill, better known as Glenn Stein, a terminally ill cancer patient who somehow stayed the shot caller for the Aryan Brotherhood. He'd been locked up since 1982, carving out his reputation as one of the most feared names in the federal system. This dude wasn't just tough, he was untouchable, with a long rap sheet of mayhem. Back in 2015, he even made headlines for threatening to assault and kill federal officials, and still kept running the yard like a boss. But here's where it flips into a whole other level of scandal. In February 2023, while serving time at a Colorado Supermax, Stein drops a bombshell in a sworn statement dated May 19, 2025. He says a Bureau of Prisons official, Reed Childress, approached him with dirty deals. Not the first time either. Stein swore he'd been used for over 13 years to set up beatings and even arrange hits on other inmates, all while being rewarded with perks. We're talking no cell shakedowns, freedom to move contraband, and protection that let him operate like prison royalty.
According to documents that R. Kelly's legal team just filed, they're alleging that there is a man, last name Stein, who is a gang leader, a big gang leader, and that he has provided a sworn statement to them that prison officials offered him his freedom to spend his last days free if he would allegedly kill R.
And now, with R. Kelly in the mix, people are wondering, did the system itself hand the green light on his life? That February 2023 meetup wasn't some casual prison check-in. It was straight out of a crime thriller. Childress pulled up unannounced, rolling deep with Warden Gutierrez and Associate Warden Steinle. No guards, no witnesses, just 3 high-ranking officials in a lockdown corner with a dying shot caller. Suspicious? That's beyond suspicious. That's a whole red flag parade. See, Stein was already living on borrowed time with his terminal cancer diagnosis, and Childress came at him with what can only be described as a deal cooked straight in Hell's Kitchen. The pitch? Dead simple, but deadly serious. Stein was going to be transferred to FCI Butner in North Carolina, the exact same spot where R. Kelly was serving his sentence. His assignment? Take out the fallen R and B star. No hesitation, no mercy. And the incentive was insane. Stein would take the heat for the murder, but the conviction would magically vanish because the so-called evidence would be lost in the system. Officials were basically promising him a free pass to kill. Imagine that. The Bureau of Prisons dangling murder-for-hire schemes like it's just another day at the office.
The way that this man says that this was supposed to go down is that he was supposed to kill R. Kelly, allegedly, and then he would get charged for it, and then he alleges that prison officials were going to fumble the evidence and ultimately bury the case. They would then allegedly transfer him to another location where he would be allowed to escape and stay free.
It's just him. It's a few people that when they got these long cases, suddenly they all got plots to murder them and they all want to get out.
But here's where it gets even messier. According to Stein's own paperwork, Childress wasn't just painting Kelly as another target. He straight up labeled Kelly as an enemy of the system. Childress allegedly said Kelly had victimized white girls, making him an easy mark for the Aryan Brotherhood. But that was just the smokescreen. The real reason? Kelly's powerhouse legal team was digging too close to secrets that could expose top BOP brass and even higher-ups inside the DOJ. In other words, Kelly wasn't just another inmate. He was a ticking bomb that threatened to blow the cover off corruption at the very top. What exactly was R. Kelly about to expose? According to the whispers, it was nothing less than straight-up government corruption. We're talking about illegal wiretaps on his attorney-client calls and obstruction of justice so bold it sounds like a Hollywood script. Kelly's legal squad swears those tapes were slipped to prosecutors, who then leaned on witnesses, including his ex, Ry Clary, to flip on him in court. If that's true, it means the very system built to protect justice might have sabotaged it from the inside. Now here's where the plot gets darker. Stein, a man who openly admitted he'd spilled blood before, didn't flinch when the plan was first pitched. He was down. The feds moved lightning fast. Within just 2 weeks, his transfer went through. And by October 17th, 2023, Stein was planted inside FCI Butner, right where Kelly was caged up. At first, they parked him in the medical unit, but by March 2025, he was quietly slipped onto Kelly's block. And from the moment his feet hit the unit, the pressure was on. A suit allegedly whispered a chilling reminder. You need to handle what you came here for. From then on, Stein shadowed Kelly like a hunter trailing prey. He mapped the singer's routine, clocked his weak spots, and studied every opening to strike. Kelly never knew death was pacing him step for step. But then, a twist nobody saw coming. This hardened killer, this man who once thrived on violence, started cracking under the weight of his own conscience. Facing death himself, Stein said he had a change of heart. He couldn't justify murdering another man. Not for dirty officials, not to bury secrets, not even to protect himself. For the first time, the so-called executioner refused the hit. April 11th, 2025, the day Stein was supposed to seal R. Kelly's fate, turned into the day everything flipped upside down. Instead of pulling off the hit, Stein marched straight up to Kelly and dropped a bombshell confession. I told him the real. I told him I had been sent to kill him. I told him how and by who. And I told him his life was absolutely in danger. Imagine hearing that from the same man who'd been stalking you for weeks. That chilling shadow trailing your every step was actually sent to take you out. For Kelly, that revelation must have been a nightmare come to life. But Stein's sudden betrayal of the plot didn't just rattle Kelly. It created chaos for the people allegedly pulling the strings. Now it wasn't just a secret between officials and their hitman. There were two witnesses to the conspiracy, the target himself and the executioner who refused to finish the mission. That's the kind of loose-end, no cover-up crew wants hanging around. And Stein didn't just talk, he went all in on exposing the game. He pushed for a lie detector test, said he'd testify in court, and even promised to name other witnesses who could confirm his long history of carrying out BOP-directed violence. This wasn't just a hitman going soft. Stein was rebranding himself as a whistleblower, framing the choice as his redemption arc. Not another bloody ending, but a final act of truth. Even after Stein flipped sides, the pressure didn't stop. Lieutenant Teague supposedly kept leaning on him, hitting him up over and over, demanding he finish the job. But Stein stood firm. He wasn't budging, not this time. And that act of defiance put both men in even hotter danger. Then came June 6, 2025, the day this plot went from dark to downright sinister. Kelly's legal team uncovered that Teague wasn't done scheming. Reports claim he approached another Aryan Brotherhood member inside Butner to pick up the assignment, a man named David Keith Harris. Just like Stein, Harris was expected to follow orders without hesitation. His mission? Take out R. Kelly and silence Stein too. According to Harris's own statement, Teague didn't leave the plan vague. He laid out specific methods for the killings, and one of them was chilling. Poison. The idea was to slip toxins into food at the chow hall or sneak it into commissary items Kelly couldn't avoid. This wasn't some sloppy, brutal attack. It was designed to look clean, untraceable. If Kelly collapsed, it could easily be explained away as health complications. He already battles blood clots, or brushed off as an accidental overdose. And the coldest part? By dragging commissary food into the scheme, the danger became inescapable. Kelly couldn't just skip the chow line and feel safe. Even the snacks and basics he bought with his own money could be laced. That meant every bite, every sip, every routine part of prison survival could have been a death trap waiting to happen. Just like Stein, Harris refused to play executioner. Instead of carrying out the murders, he turned straight to Kelly's lawyers and blew the whistle. And once that detail hit the press and social media, Kelly's supporters went wild. Headlines named Harris directly, and online posts zeroed in on the terrifying poisoning angle. Suddenly, this wasn't just about taking out Kelly, it looked like a full-on cleanup mission. Stein himself suggested it was all about silencing both the star and the hitman turned snitch before either could fully expose the plot. And here's where timing turned everything explosive. That second approach to Harris came just days before Kelly's legal team dropped their emergency bombshell. On June 10, 2025, attorney Bob Brinley filed a motion in federal court in Chicago demanding Kelly's immediate release to home detention. The reason? Straight-up assassination attempts allegedly orchestrated by the very system meant to house him. The motion didn't just talk. It came packed with sworn statements from both Stein and Harris. They both offered to testify under oath and even strap into polygraph tests to prove their claims. The filing accused 3 senior Bureau of Prisons officials, including a warden, an assistant warden, and another top administrator, of orchestrating a murder plot from the inside. Of course, no names were blasted publicly, likely because of ongoing litigation and privacy shields, but the accusation was crystal clear. Keeping Kelly locked up under these conditions wasn't punishment. It was a death sentence. His attorneys argued this was nothing less than cruel and unusual punishment under the 8th Amendment. And the kicker? BOP records really did confirm Stein's suspicious transfer from Arizona to North Carolina, which gave heavy weight to his testimony. Still, the agency clammed up and refused to comment, hiding behind privacy and security concerns. But by then, the damage was done. The conspiracy was out in the open and the heat was on. The prosecutors in Chicago weren't buying a word of it. The U.S. Attorney's Office came back swinging hard, blasting Kelly's emergency motion as nothing more than a wild fantasy. They argued Stein's rap sheet alone destroyed his credibility, calling the whole story fanciful, fantastic, and deeply unserious. In their eyes, this wasn't a conspiracy. It was a desperate ploy cooked up by a convicted star and his shady sources to trick the court. But then, the universe dropped a twist so dark it shook the room. Just 2 days after the motion became public, reality seemed to mirror the very nightmare prosecutors had just dismissed. On June 13, 2025, Kelly's world spiraled into chaos when the alleged assassination plot suddenly looked like it might be happening for real. That morning at FCI, Butner started out ordinary. Kelly locked in solitary confinement. Officially, they claimed he was in the hole for his protection. But his legal team swore it was straight retaliation for exposing the murder-for-hire scheme. And what unfolded next blurred the line between paranoid theory and deadly reality. According to court filings, the sequence reads like a scene out of a medical thriller. Kelly woke up dizzy, lightheaded, and seeing black spots cloud his vision. He tried to stand, stumbled, then collapsed, dragging himself across the concrete floor toward his cell door before blacking out completely. By the time guards found him, he was unresponsive. Prison medical staff rushed in but quickly admitted they were out of their depth. His condition was too severe to treat on site. The call went out fast. Ambulance transport to Duke University Hospital in Durham, North Carolina. This wasn't just a scare. Kelly was literally fighting for his life, strapped to a gurney and racing against the clock. And in that moment, the stakes skyrocketed. Was this sudden collapse the smoking gun that proved poison really had been slipped into his system? Or was it the ultimate act of theater by a desperate man trying to claw his way out of a prison sentence? Either way, the headlines wrote themselves, and the conspiracy that prosecutors had laughed off was now impossible to ignore. Kelly's legal team didn't see a random medical scare. They saw an assassination attempt dressed up as a health emergency. According to them, prison staff deliberately dosed him with dangerous levels of medication, nearly ending his life behind bars. And the timing? Just days after the murder-for-hire allegations went public. His lawyers say that was no coincidence. It was retaliation, plain and simple. Attorney Bo Brinley laid it out in detail. While Kelly sat isolated in the hole, guards allegedly handed him his usual meds for anxiety and sleep. But this time, they slipped in an extra dose, pressuring him to take it. By the next morning, Kelly was spiraling. Dizziness, blackouts, and finally collapsing unconscious on the floor of his cell. His body was shutting down, and his team insists that was the exact goal. Once at Duke University Hospital, things got even scarier. Tests allegedly confirmed Kelly had overdosed on blood pressure and anxiety medications at levels described as life-threatening. On top of that, doctors discovered fresh blood clots in both his legs and lungs, the very condition that can kill a man in seconds if untreated. Kelly's camp claims this was no accident either. They argue the Bureau of Prisons deliberately yanked him off his prescribed blood thinners, knowing his history made clots a guaranteed death sentence. With Kelly unconscious and tubes running into his body, doctors at Duke insisted on emergency surgery to address the clots and recommended at least a full 7-day hospital stay. For Kelly's lawyers, this wasn't just medical negligence, this was proof of a system trying to finish the job after their original plot got exposed. And for the world watching, it was the chilling image of an R&B legend strapped to hospital machines caught in what looked more and more like a war for his very survival. Kelly's legal team says the hospital's life-saving recommendation was flat out ignored. And what happened next, they call nothing short of a cover-up. According to them, Bureau of Prisons officers stormed into his hospital room, guns drawn, and yanked Kelly out against medical advice. Instead of the 7-day monitored stay doctors ordered, he was dragged straight back into solitary confinement like nothing had happened. The coldness of that move can't be overstated. Pulmonary embolisms, blood clots in the lungs, are among the deadliest medical conditions known. They can trigger sudden death with no warning, which is why the medical standard is immediate treatment and continuous monitoring. Yet prison officials allegedly threw him back into the hole, ignoring every medical warning, and in the eyes of his lawyers, deliberately gambling with his life. Attorney Bob Brindley didn't hold back. He accused the Bureau of deliberately poisoning Kelly with doses that could have killed him, then rushing to cover their tracks. On June 16th and 17th, the defense team filed an updated motion, explicitly calling the overdose part of an ongoing murder plot. The timing, just days after the first conspiracy allegations, was, in their eyes, undeniable proof that this was no accident. And then came the kicker. The lawyers say they've got receipts. They argue prison surveillance cameras captured the whole sequence. Kelly showing his regular meds to guards in solitary, then being handed the extra dose by staff. On top of that, they claim Duke University Hospital's records back up the overdose findings, along with documentation that he was prematurely pulled from care. In short, Kelly's team says the evidence trail is clear. A poison plot, captured on camera, confirmed in hospital paperwork, and capped off with an armed removal that screams cover-up. If true, it's one of the most chilling allegations ever leveled at the Bureau of Prisons. And it leaves the question hanging heavy. Was this incompetence, or was it attempted murder sanctioned from the inside? By mid-June, the desperation in Kelly's camp hit a whole new level. His legal team pulled a move nobody saw coming. They appealed directly to President Donald Trump. Attorney Bob Brindley grimly argued that the courts were dragging their feet and that only Trump himself had the power to save Kelly's life. It was a Hail Mary plea, the kind that showed just how convinced they were that traditional legal channels couldn't protect him from what they described as a systematic assassination plot inside prison walls. The government's comeback was as cold as it was cutting. On June 15th, prosecutors led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Jason Julian filed a blistering response. They mocked the entire claim as fanciful and deeply unserious, blasting it as nothing more than a conspiracy theory designed to smear the system and manipulate public sympathy. Their filing went further, warning that entertaining Kelly's request would dishonor his victims and open the floodgates for convicted murderers and terrorists to try the same play. They dragged his name again, labeling him a prolific predator, and made it clear they weren't budging an inch. The courts followed the government's lead just as fast. On June 20th, U.S. District Judge Martha M. Packo slammed the door shut, flatly denying Kelly's emergency motion. She ruled she had no authority to grant home detention or furlough, not even under so-called extraordinary circumstances. Her order also cut deep, stating there was no solid evidence to support Kelly's claims. And the speed of her decision said it all. She didn't even schedule a hearing, signaling she found the allegations so lacking in credibility that they didn't deserve another minute of court time. For Kelly's supporters, the back-to-back denials painted a chilling picture. If the courts wouldn't hear him and the government wouldn't believe him, then who exactly was left to stop what his team swore was a slow-motion execution inside prison? The saga didn't end with the judge's denial. If anything, that ruling cracked open an even bigger debate. Whether every detail of Kelly's claims was true or not, the allegations themselves raised disturbing questions about the American prison system and the safety of high-profile inmates. We're talking sworn declarations, named officials, suspicious transfers, and multiple inmates all telling similar stories. That kind of detail forces you to consider two possibilities. Either there's an insane level of corruption at the top, or Kelly's camp was pulling off one of the boldest fabrications in legal history. The public response was as messy as the story itself. On social media, comment sections, and news coverage, reactions were split, but most leaned skeptical. A large crowd saw the whole saga as a desperate stunt, a ploy by Kelly's lawyers to spin headlines and pressure the courts with sensational claims that couldn't be disproved fast enough. To them, this was just another chapter of excuses from a man already convicted of horrific crimes. But not everyone shrugged it off. Others pointed to the brutal reality of prison life, especially for men convicted of crimes against women and children. Violence against those inmates isn't just common, it's practically expected. And from that angle, even if officials weren't behind some elaborate murder conspiracy, the threats against Kelly were still real enough to take seriously. In their eyes, the story wasn't about clearing Kelly's name, it was about whether the system can guarantee basic survival for anyone it locks up, even the most hated names in America. To really understand why R. Kelly keeps finding himself in the crosshairs behind bars, you've got to look at the prison code, a brutal, unspoken rule book that dictates survival inside America's cages. Even among convicted criminals, certain lines are never crossed without a deadly price, and sitting at the absolute bottom of that hierarchy, men convicted of crimes against children. That's where Kelly sits, and in prison terms, that paints a target on his back 24/7. The threats against him didn't just pop up in 2025 with those assassination allegations. They'd been boiling for years. One of the clearest examples came way back on August 26, 2020, while Kelly was locked up at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago waiting for trial. That morning, reality struck hard. Around 9:45 a.m., another inmate, Jeremiah Shane Farmer, made his move. Farmer wasn't just any prisoner. He was a full-fledged member of the Latin Kings, his face covered in tattoos, including teardrops marking lives taken. His rap sheet already tied him to the 1999 hammer murders of two businessmen, 74-year-old Marion Lowry and 67-year-old Harvey Seeger. This wasn't some petty hustler. This was a stone-cold killer with nothing to lose. When a guard got distracted, Farmer slipped away and stormed into Kelly's cell. Kelly was asleep on the lower bunk, completely defenseless, when Farmer pounced. He climbed on top of the R&B star and unleashed a barrage of punches straight to his head and body. The beating was vicious, methodical, and fueled by the same prison code that marks men like Kelly as open targets. It only stopped when a prison officer finally ordered Farmer to stand down. When he refused, the officer was forced to blast pepper spray just to rip him off Kelly. The damage was real: cuts, bruises, head injuries, though Kelly avoided hospitalization. But the physical scars weren't the worst part. The psychological aftermath cut deeper than any punch. That attack left Kelly rattled, paranoid, and fully aware that in prison, he wasn't just another inmate, he was prey. After the brutal attack by Jeremiah Shane Farmer, the fallout came quick. Kelly, terrified of retaliation from Farmer's associates, was shoved into solitary confinement for his protection, while Farmer himself was shipped off to another prison. But what really blew people's minds wasn't just the attack. It was the paperwork Farmer filed afterward. In a 4-page handwritten motion he titled, "The government made me attack R. Kelly," Farmer dropped a bombshell of his own. According to his claims, this wasn't just gang beef or prison code payback. Farmer said government staff had pushed him toward the attack. He described an argument with an MCC mental health worker who allegedly taunted him, saying, "Go do it," practically daring him to assault Kelly. Farmer even alleged that staff shadowed him during the incident, allowing him to reach Kelly's cell and launch the assault before finally stepping in with pepper spray to stop it. If true, that means this wasn't just a random beatdown. It was stage theater, with prison staff letting it play out. Farmer's anger wasn't simple, though. He said COVID-19 lockdowns at MCC cut off inmates from legal aid and the jail library, fueling his frustrations. On top of that, he openly admitted his disgust toward Kelly's crimes, calling him a file in his motion and saying the charges themselves drove his rage. In other words, Farmer saw Kelly as the perfect outlet, the inmate nobody would defend. And here's where it gets chilling. This reasoning fits perfectly with the unwritten prison code. Behind bars, child offenders don't just rank low, they rank at the rock bottom, often lower than murderers, gang leaders, or career criminals. They become scapegoats. The inmates other prisoners can brutalize to vent their frustrations while earning status in the process. Farmer's own words show exactly how this code works. Kelly wasn't just another target. He was the lowest of the low, a convenient punching bag for both inmates and, if his claims hold weight, maybe even prison staff. This isn't just prison gossip. It's a deadly reality backed up by research. A 2017 study found that violence against child offenders isn't random at all. Nearly 40% of assaults on these inmates come from what others inside see as vigilante justice, a twisted sense of protecting society from predators even behind bars. Inmates convince themselves they're delivering justice where the outside world failed, and the consequences can be fatal. The reasons run deep. Many prisoners have kids of their own or lived through abuse growing up. To them, crimes against children aren't just criminal. They're unforgivable sins against the vulnerable. When an inmate successfully attacks a child molester, it isn't just payback. It boosts their reputation instantly, elevating them in the prison hierarchy. They become the guy who handled business, and that respect carries weight on the inside. Even outside of studies, the code shows up everywhere. Former inmates and Reddit accounts all echo the same thing. Child molesters are fair game. Violence against them boosts clout, whether it's beatings, stabbings, or full-on takedowns. That's why prisons often isolate these offenders in protective custody. But even in PC units, they face stigma, extortion, and harassment every single day. And when they're placed in general population, it's open season, with gangs often orchestrating attacks to make a public statement. For Robert Sylvester Kelly, that danger multiplies. His convictions didn't just involve one incident. Prosecutors branded him a prolific predator tied to multiple underage victims. And while the courts convicted him on those charges, his past already included one of the most infamous scandals in music history: his illegal marriage to the late Aaliyah when she was just 15 years old. That fact alone makes him an instant target in prison culture. And yet, his celebrity status doesn't shield him. It makes it worse. Fame amplifies everything inside. It means he's not just another inmate, he's a prize. Hurting Kelly isn't just prison justice, it's a badge of honor. Every move he makes, every breath he takes inside those walls, he's marked by both his crimes and his name. And that combination creates a danger few prisoners will ever face on his level. R. Kelly's presence behind bars hasn't just drawn attention, it's thrown entire facilities into chaos. His high-profile cases have triggered lockdowns, sparked protests, and forced staff to crank up security, which other inmates blame directly on him. That resentment, mixed with the stigma of his convictions, creates a perfect storm of danger that never really lets up. The 2020 assault wasn't just some random outburst. It was part of a wider pattern of violence that dogs offenders like him in prisons across the country. Prison gangs like the Aryan Brotherhood, the Latin Kings, and the Bloods all enforce the so-called anti-child molester code, but each does it in their own way. Sometimes it's personal, other times it's strategic. A way to score points, climb ranks, and prove loyalty. For attackers, striking someone like Kelly isn't just vengeance, it's a career move inside the criminal hierarchy. And here's where the hypocrisy gets downright chilling. Take the Aryan Brotherhood, one of the most feared gangs in the system. They love to claim they're protecting children when they go after men like Kelly, but their record tells a very different story. Multiple AB members have themselves been convicted of the very same crimes they pretend to be punishing. One recent case saw an AB member sentenced to 60 years for repeated assaults on a 14-year-old girl. Another involved a former Aryan Nations leader slapped with 50 years for child-related charges. Yet another AB soldier got taken down for soliciting a minor. The pattern is clear. Their protect the kids narrative is less about morals and more about control. It's a convenient excuse to unleash violence, build power, and disguise hypocrisy under a mask of prison justice. For R. Kelly, that means his everyday inside is shaped by a twisted code where the lines between predator and protector blur, and where even the gangs who hunt him have skeletons in their own closets. The hypocrisy cuts even deeper when you look at Mickey Glenn Stein, the Aryan Brotherhood shot caller who later claimed he refused to kill Kelly in 2025. This same man had decades of blood on his hands, with a violent rap sheet that stretched back to the early 80s. For him to suddenly position himself as a would-be whistleblower against corruption shows just how twisted and layered the entire saga really is. Meanwhile, Kelly's family has never wavered from their stance. Through every trial, every conviction, and every headline, they've insisted on his innocence. His uncle, Gregory Preston, spoke out after one of Kelly's sentencings, telling reporters he stood firmly behind his nephew no matter how damning the evidence seemed. To him, the prison threats only proved how dangerous and unfair the system was. Even Kelly's estranged brother, Bruce, who'd had years of beef and legal disputes with him, showed cracks of conflict when asked about the situation during his own legal troubles. This hurt. This hurt my soul. I don't believe that these charges are true. I don't believe these women are being truthful. His words painted the picture of a family torn apart, yet still tied together by blood and disbelief. And while outsiders debate guilt, innocence, and conspiracies, one fact remains brutal. The psychological warfare Kelly faces behind bars is relentless. Every single day carries the possibility of violence. Every look, every interaction could be the spark that turns deadly. Add in the suffocating isolation of protective custody, and what you get is a psychological pressure cooker capable of breaking even the hardest men alive. For Kelly, survival isn't just about avoiding poison or dodging fists. It's about enduring a system designed to strip away sanity piece by piece until nothing remains but paranoia, fear, and silence. As of now, R. Kelly is still caged inside FCI Butner, and the silence surrounding him is deafening. Since the explosive events of June 2025, no major updates have surfaced. No confirmation of poison, no confirmation of cover-ups, no breakthrough legal wins, just silence. And that silence speaks volumes. To some, it proves exactly what Kelly's lawyers warned, that the system buried every trace of the conspiracy, locking away both the evidence and the man at the center of it. To others, it's proof that prosecutors were right all along, that these were nothing more than desperate fabrications spun out by a convicted predator trying to game the system. Either way, the truth sits sealed behind those prison walls, and Kelly's future remains as murky as ever, caught somewhere between scandal, survival, and silence. R. Kelly's downfall has always been bigger than the courtroom. His saga didn't end with a guilty verdict. It bled into the prison walls, where survival itself became the trial of his life. From alleged government-sanctioned hit jobs to poison plots, from gang code justice to shocking family defenses, the story has swerved between conspiracy thriller and brutal reality. And the wildest part, we still don't know if the silence today means the truth was buried or if it was never there in the first place. What is undeniable is the picture this paints of America's prison machine. High-profile inmates like Kelly don't just serve time. They step into a pressure cooker where every enemy, every guard, and every gang sees them as a payday or a trophy. His fame didn't protect him. If anything, it made the target on his back glow brighter. So whether you see him as victim, villain, or both, one fact stands. R. Kelly's story is a chilling reminder that once you're inside, survival is never guaranteed, not even for a superstar. And if you want the real breakdowns on stories the mainstream won't touch, keep it locked right here with BarzBuzz, where the truth hits harder than the headlines.